Captain James Anderson. That was my full name, although everyone just knew me as Jimmy. For 18 years, I flew commercially for American Airlines, logging over 15,000 flight hours without a single incident. It wasn't just a line on my resume, it was a reflection of who I was: meticulous, responsible, someone who treated passenger safety as a sacred mission. I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, the son of a retired Air Force aviation mechanic. My father, Robert Anderson, used to take me to air shows when I was a kid. I remember being mesmerized by the Blue Angels pilots, dreaming of one day commanding an aircraft. "Son," he'd say, watching my fascination, "flying isn't about adrenaline. It's about responsibility. Every time you take off, hundreds of families are putting their lives in your hands." Those words shaped my entire career. At 22, I graduated with honors in aeronautical science from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. I started flying for regional airlines, building experience with small turboprops before landing a position with American Airlines in 2006. It was a dream come true, flying for one of the world's largest airlines. I met Sarah Miller in 2004 during a flight where she was working as a flight attendant for Delta. She was stunning. Brown hair that shimmered under the cabin lights, green eyes full of quiet confidence, and a smile that could calm even the most nervous passenger. We married in 2005 in a small ceremony in Des Moines, surrounded by close family. Sarah understood from the start that my career would require sacrifices, constant travel, unpredictable hours, nights away from home. But she fully supported me, especially when our first daughter Emma was born in 2007, followed by Lily in 2009. Two girls who became my entire world. Emma, now 17, brilliant and determined like her mother, dreaming of becoming a doctor. Lily, 15, artistic and sensitive, always sketching airplanes in her notebooks. We lived in Schaumburg, Illinois, a suburban town about 40 minutes from O'Hare Airport. Our home was modest but cozy, a two-story colonial with a backyard where the girls used to play when they were little. The living room walls were lined with family photos, flight certifications, and a few pictures of me standing beside aircraft I'd flown over the years. At 45 in 2024, I had become one of the most respected pilots at American Airlines. My record was spotless, never a major delay due to negligence, never a protocol violation, never a single incident. My performance reports were consistently excellent, and co-pilots always praised my calm under pressure. That reputation put me at the forefront for the biggest promotion of my career, chief pilot for American Airlines international routes. It wasn't just about prestige, though leading the international operations of one of the world's top airlines was an extraordinary recognition. It was about impact, $300,000 a year that would completely transform my family's life. Emma could attend any college she wanted. Lily would have every opportunity to grow her artistic talent. And Sarah and I could finally buy our dream home.
But there was one problem. I wasn't the only qualified candidate. Captain Damon Wilson had joined American Airlines 8 years earlier, in 2016, bringing with him big ambitions and a personality that shifted between charming and arrogant. Tall, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile he wielded like a weapon, Damon had the technical skills, but lacked the discipline and respect for protocol that I believed were fundamental. From the start, our relationship was strained. Damon seemed to view our profession as a game, one where the goal was to impress supervisors and rack up glamorous flight hours, while I focused on safety and operational excellence. He had a habit of cutting unnecessary procedures and often questioned established protocols, choices that stalled his career, while I steadily climbed the ranks. His envy became increasingly obvious over the years. Every recognition I received, every high-profile international flight I was assigned, every public commendation from leadership seemed to stoke a growing resentment in Damon. He began making sarcastic remarks about my luck and favoritism with management. "Must be nice to be the admin's golden boy, Jimmy," he once said after I was chosen to fly a special mission transporting diplomats to London. "Some of us have to work twice as hard for half the credit." I tried to ignore the comments, focusing on my work and my family. But now, with the chief pilot position up for grabs, the tension had reached a breaking point. We were the only two pilots with the necessary qualifications: international experience, leadership history, advanced certifications. The difference was in the details: my spotless record versus his disciplinary issues. Everyone knew I was the obvious favorite for the role, and everyone knew that was making Damon desperate.
Damon's behavior began to shift drastically in the weeks leading up to the final announcement. It was October 2024, and fall had arrived in full force in Chicago. Golden leaves carpeting the areas around O'Hare. I should have been focused solely on preparing for the most important flight of my career, transporting company executives to Paris in a final demonstration of competence. But something was deeply unsettling me. Damon had become a constant shadow. It started subtly. I'd show up from my pre-flight checks and find him casually wandering through the maintenance area. "Hey, Jimmy," he'd say with that now forced smile. "Just checking a few things on my bird. How's prep for the big flight?" At first, I chalked it up to his naturally competitive streak, but then I started noticing odd patterns. Damon appeared in the hangar at unusual hours, too early, too late, always when no one expected him. I'd see him having intense conversations with maintenance technicians, asking detailed questions about systems unrelated to his own aircraft. "Why are you asking about the 737-800's hydraulic systems?" I overheard him once asking Mike Peterson, one of our veteran mechanics. "Just trying to expand my knowledge, always learning." But Mike later came to me, visibly uneasy. "Jimmy, something weird's going on. Damon's been asking a lot of specific stuff about your aircraft. Wants to know when it would be left alone in the hangar, who have access, that kind of thing." That conversation left me deeply disturbed. I started watching Damon's movements more closely, and what I found alarmed me even further. 2 weeks before the Paris flight, I found Damon in Hangar 7 at 11 p.m., well after normal work hours. He was crouched near the landing gear of the N7846A with a flashlight, inspecting something I couldn't quite see. "Damon?" I called out, startling him violently. "Jimmy, man, you scared me. I was just, checking a few things." "Checking what? That's not your aircraft." "Relax, man. I'm just trying to learn from the best, right? You've always been meticulous with your checks. Thought I'd observe your technique." But he wouldn't meet my eyes, and his hands were shaking slightly. Something was very wrong. The following week, I started noticing missing tools in the maintenance area. Specific wrenches for hydraulic components, small precision instruments. When asked the maintenance supervisor, Frank Rodriguez, he looked puzzled. "That's odd, Jimmy. Some specialty tools have gone missing and then reappeared the next day. I figured it was just forgetfulness from one of the techs, but now that you mention it." "What kind of tools?" "Wrenches for hydraulic connectors, pressure adjustment instruments, stuff someone could use to tamper with critical systems." My blood ran cold. I began doing extra inspections on the N7846A, checking systems I normally wouldn't review so frequently. Everything looked normal, but a creeping sense of paranoia had taken over. 3 days before the Paris flight, I decided to take a step that would change everything. Working late at night at home, I researched miniature security cameras. If Damon was plotting something, I needed evidence. I found a device the size of a coin, capable of continuous recording and remote transmission. It was usually used for home surveillance, but it would suit my needs perfectly. At dawn the next morning,
I arrived at the hangar before sunrise and discreetly installed the microcamera in the maintenance area of the N7846A, positioned to capture any suspicious activity near the hydraulic systems. I set it to automatically upload recordings to a cloud server I had created with a backup system I personally programmed. But I went further. Something told me I needed a safety net. I set up an automatic trigger. If I didn't enter a specific code every 7 days, all recordings would be sent directly to the FBI, FAA, and Sarah. It was an extreme precaution, but my paranoia had reached critical levels. Sarah noticed my growing anxiety. "Jimmy, are you okay? You've been acting strange lately." "Just nervous about the Paris flight," I lied, not wanting to worry her with suspicions I wasn't even sure were real. "You've done hundreds of international flights. Why would this one be any different?" It's important for the promotion. If it goes well, it could change everything for us." She held my hand. "You'll do great, Jimmy. You always do." 2 days before the flight, the camera captured something that confirmed my worst fears. At 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday, Damon entered the hangar using an access card that wasn't supposed to work outside business hours. He headed straight for the N7846A with a small backpack and a powerful flashlight. Over the next 40 minutes, the camera recorded Damon methodically tampering with the aircraft's hydraulic systems. He had clearly done his research. He knew exactly where to access the critical connectors. I watched him systematically loosen multiple connection points. Not enough to cause an immediate failure, but just enough to guarantee a catastrophic malfunction mid-flight, most likely during the most critical phase, takeoff or landing. It was pure, calculated sabotage. Damon was trying to cause an accident that would kill not just me, but all 180 passengers and crew on board, including the American Airlines executives who were the true targets of his ambition. His plan was diabolical in its simplicity. Cause an accident that would be investigated as mechanical failure or pilot error. With my death, he would automatically become the only qualified candidate for the chief pilot position, and if he could somehow pin negligence on me in the post-mortem investigation, he'd cement his image as the responsible pilot the company needed. I recorded everything, but I didn't know what to do next. If I confronted Damon directly, he could deny it and accelerate his plan. If I alerted authorities without conclusive evidence, it could be seen as a desperate attempt to sabotage a colleague due to the promotion competition. I decided I needed more proof. I planned to arrive early the day before the flight to document the damage and then alert maintenance with irrefutable evidence. It was the decision that cost me my life. On the night of October 24, 2024, I arrived at Hangar 7 at 10:30 p.m., 3 hours earlier than usual. The hangar was dimly lit by emergency lights, casting long shadows between the aircraft. The October wind howled through small openings, causing metal structures to vibrate occasionally. I approached the N7846A with my flashlight and inspection gear. My heart was pounding. I was finally going to have the proof I needed to expose Damon and ensure the safety of the flight. What I found confirmed everything. The main hydraulic connectors were visibly loose, some barely hanging by a few threads. During a flight, the pressure and vibration would cause complete hydraulic failure, resulting in total loss of control. I was documenting everything with my phone when I heard footsteps echo through the hangar. "Working late, Jimmy?" I turned to find Damon Wilson walking toward me, his features partially hidden in the shadows, but something in his posture, in his tone, made me instantly realize that he knew I had discovered his sabotage. "Damon," I tried to keep my voice steady. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same." He stopped a few feet away, and I saw he was holding a large wrench in his right hand. "Find anything interesting?"
"Yes, Damon," I replied, keeping my voice firm despite the growing terror. "I found something very interesting.
I raised my phone, showing the photos I'd taken of the sabotaged hydraulic connectors. I found evidence that someone tried to sabotage this aircraft. Sabotage that would have killed 180 innocent people. Damon's smile vanished completely. For a moment, I saw the man behind the mask. Cold, calculating, desperate. "Jimmy, Jimmy, Jimmy," he said, slowly shaking his head. "You've always been too meticulous for your own good. You're going to deny it, even with all the evidence?" "Deny it worked," he gave a bitter laugh. "Why bother? You've already seen too much. You already know too much." That's when I realized Damon wasn't surprised he'd been caught. He'd come to the hangar that night because he knew I'd be there. Somehow, he had anticipated my investigation. "You followed me," I said aloud. "Of course I did. You really thought your little late-night visits went unnoticed? Your questions to the mechanics? Your growing paranoia?" He took a few more steps toward me, the wrench gleaming under the faint light. "I knew you'd eventually figure it out. In fact, I was counting on it." "Counting on it?" "Jimmy, you're so predictable. You've always been. The goody two-shoes pilot, always following protocol, always doing the right thing. I knew that once you discovered the sabotage, you'd come here first to document it, alone, because that's who you are." "You need absolute certainty before accusing anyone?" My phone was in my hand, but I realized there was no signal in the hangar, and even if there was, Damon was between me and the only exit. "Why, Damon? Why do this? We've been colleagues for 8 years." "Colleagues?" He laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "Jimmy, you never saw me as colleague. You saw me as lesser competition. Always the admin's darling, always getting the prestigious flights, always being praised for your exceptional dedication to safety. You could have earned those things on your own merit." "Merit?" His voice jumped an octave. "I have merit. I have the same qualifications as you. But no one gives me a chance because you take up all the space. Every promotion you got was one I deserved." "So you decided to kill me." "I decided to remove an obstacle." His voice was icy now. "The original plan was simple. The Paris flight would suffer a tragic accident, you'd be posthumously blamed for negligence during pre-flight inspection, and I'd naturally assume the chief pilot role, as the most qualified remaining candidate." "You would have killed 180 innocent people?" "Collateral damage," he shrugged with a chilling indifference. "But now, you've complicated things. Now you have evidence. So we'll have to improvise." Damon began moving toward me, and I instinctively backed up until I was pressed against the fuselage of the N7846A. "It won't work, Damon. Even if you kill me, others will investigate. The sabotage will be discovered." "Not if your death is classified as an accident." He raised the wrench. "Poor Jimmy, working too late, trying to impress the bosses, slipped during a routine inspection and hit his head. Happens more often than you think in aviation." "No one's gonna believe that." "Oh, they will. Especially when they find your digital fingerprints all over the maintenance area, your tools scattered around, evidence that you were tampering with the hydraulic systems." His smile returned, but it was something terrible to witness. "Who do you think they'll blame for the sabotage when your desperate attempt to frame a colleague is uncovered posthumously?" His plan was even more sinister than I had imagined. He wasn't just trying to kill me, he was trying to destroy my reputation and blame me for the very sabotage he had committed. "You're insane!" "No, Jimmy, I'm focused. For the first time in years, I see a clear path to finally getting what I deserve." I tried to run, but the confined space of the hangar limited me. Damon was younger and faster. The wrench struck my head with brutal force, and I felt myself falling, the world spinning in a blur of pain and confusion. As my vision darkened, I heard Damon moving around me. He was staging the crime scene, scattering tools,
positioning my body to make it look like an accidental fall. "You know, Jimmy," I heard his voice, distant and echoing, "in a fair world, it would have never come to this. But you never gave me a real chance to compete. Now finally, I'll get the recognition I always deserved." My final sight was of Damon placing tools into my limp hands, planting false evidence that I had been tampering with my own aircraft. And then, everything went black. I died there, in Hangar 7 at O'Hare Airport, at 11:47 p.m. on October 23, 2024. Cause of death: blunt force trauma, ruled as an accident during maintenance inspection, according to the official report. But death wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning of my revenge. Because while Damon Wilson was busy staging my death and secretly celebrating his victory, a system I had prepared weeks earlier was beginning its countdown. The micro camera I installed had captured everything, not just the original sabotage, but our final confrontation and my murder. All the footage was being automatically uploaded to secure cloud servers, waiting only for my failure to enter the weekly security code. Damon thought he had won, thought he had eliminated the only obstacle between him and the position of his dreams. He was about to find out that underestimating Captain James Anderson, even dead, was the biggest mistake of his life. The countdown had begun. In exactly 7 days, when I failed to enter the security code, the truth would be revealed simultaneously to the FBI, the FAA, and my family. 7 days for Damon to savor his victory. 7 days before his world came crashing down.
The funeral of Captain James Anderson was held on a cold November morning at Graceland Cemetery in Chicago. Hundreds attended: fellow pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, supervisors from American Airlines, and lifelong friends from a career in aviation. Sarah was unrecognizable in her black dress, holding the hands of Emma and Lily, who cried silently for their father. The casket was draped in the American flag, honoring my years of service as a commercial pilot. And among the pallbearers was Damon Wilson, flawlessly playing the part of the devastated colleague who had lost a great friend and mentor. "Jimmy was the kind of pilot we all aspired to be," he said during his eulogy, his voice trembling with convincing emotion. "His dedication to safety and excellence was truly inspiring. I promise to honor his memory by carrying the leadership mantle he would have wanted me to." 3 days after the funeral, Damon Wilson was officially promoted to chief pilot of American Airlines international routes. The company's announcement described it as a fitting tribute to the legacy of the late Captain Anderson. Damon moved into a top-floor office in American Airlines Executive Building with a panoramic view of O'Hare's runways. His salary jumped to $300,000 a year, exactly as planned. He bought a new BMW, started dining at expensive restaurants, and spoke openly about plans to buy a home in Lake Forest, one of Chicago's most exclusive neighborhoods. For 7 days, Damon Wilson lived the dream that had cost me my life. On the morning of November 5, 2024, exactly 1 week after my death, 3 organizations simultaneously received an extensive digital package: the FBI, the Federal Aviation Administration, and Sarah Anderson. The package contained 47 hours of high-definition footage. Sarah was the first to watch the recordings. At first, confused by what she was seeing, she quickly grasped the full magnitude of what her husband had discovered and documented. She saw Damon systematically sabotaging the aircraft I was meant to fly. She saw our final confrontation. She saw my murder. She saw the truth. 2 hours later, FBI special agents arrived at Damon Wilson's office. He was reviewing the upcoming week's flight routes when agents Margaret Chan and David Rodriguez entered, accompanied by FAA investigators. "Captain Wilson," Agent Chen said, flashing her badge, "you are under arrest for the murder of Captain James Anderson and attempted domestic terrorism." Damon's face went pale instantly. What? What are you talking about? Jimmy died in an accident." "No, sir. Jimmy Anderson was murdered by you after discovering your systematic sabotage of aircraft N7846A. We have irrefutable evidence." When they showed Damon the footage, he watched in growing horror as his own conviction unfolded. Every moment of sabotage, every word of our final confrontation, every second of his crime was documented in crystal clear detail. "He recorded me," Damon whispered, realization hitting him like a thunderbolt.
The subsequent investigation revealed the full extent of Damon's plan. Investigators discovered that he had extensively researched aviation accidents, studied sabotage techniques, and even practiced on out-of-service aircraft. Evidence was found on his personal computer showing searches for aviation accidents caused by hydraulic failure and how aircraft accident investigations determine pilot liability. The most shocking revelation was that Damon had planned to posthumously frame me for the sabotage. He had fabricated evidence to suggest I was under financial pressure, and had tried to sabotage my own aircraft to collect life insurance, only to be caught and accidentally killed during the attempt. In December 2024, Damon Wilson was formally indicted on the following charges: first-degree murder, attempted domestic terrorism, sabotage of a civilian aircraft, evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice. The trial lasted 3 months. National media covered the case of the killer pilot, as Damon came to be known. The recordings that captured everything were presented as evidence, and the jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning a unanimous verdict: guilty on all counts. Damon Wilson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sarah and the girls received a $12 million settlement from American Airlines for negligence in employee oversight and for security protocol failures that allowed Damon unauthorized access to aircraft. More importantly, American Airlines implemented the James Anderson Safety Protocol, a comprehensive safety monitoring system that includes mandatory cameras in all maintenance areas, double verification of all maintenance work, and regular psychological evaluations for pilots in leadership positions. Emma Anderson, now studying medicine at Northwestern University on a memorial scholarship in my name, often says her father is still saving lives, even after death. Lily Anderson became a talented artist, creating a series of aviation-themed paintings that tour museums across the country, raising awareness about air safety. And Sarah returned to aviation as a safety instructor, teaching new pilots about the very protocols her husband died trying to protect. The envy Damon Wilson harbored toward me ultimately destroyed his life and cost me mine. But even in death, I managed to protect hundreds of innocent lives and ensure that justice was served. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is simply the truth, arriving at the right time. Captain James Anderson, signing off one final time.